Republican governor, John Kasich. Not surprised by some of these developments. The governor joining me exclusively right now. Governor, very good to have you. Do you suspect the number is much lower than we're told, or is it picking up steam? What are you noticing?
I don't know, Neil. We're at about 78,000 here in Ohio. I know that that the woodworking effect, people they thought were going to sign up, actually it's a lot lower than what we had projected. But and I think a lot of that is attributed to the confusion that surrounded the rollout. And but look, my concern about this whole program is that it doesn't have any cost control, and secondly, all the uncertainty, hurts us obviously with job creation, which is something that we're deeply concerned about out here.
Let's touch on that, because I know you've been dramatically improving the jobs picture in Ohio, and one of the things I hear from small, medium, even large business guys is that the uncertainty and the costs associated with this are a hindrance, and they are, giving them pause when it comes to hiring workers or as many full-time workers. Is that a reality in Ohio, or what are you coming to find?
Well, there isn't any question, Neil, when you have uncertainty, it causes businesses to hesitate. And part of the reason why our job numbers have dramatically improved, and just to give you a sense, in the last year we were 7th in job growth in America. From the time that I've come into office in about 3 years, we went from 48th in the country in job growth all the way down to 5th. So during that period of time, we've seen dramatic improvements. And the time I've been in office, we've led the Midwest. We're up about 238,000 jobs, but we have a long way to go. And the bottom line is anything that causes uncertainty gives employers pause. Part of the reason why we're doing better is that we went from $8 billion in the hole to $1.5 billion surplus. We've cut taxes consistently, and we have had a series of efforts to bring common sense into regulations. And when you do that, the proof's in the pudding here in the state. When you're the 48th fastest job-growing state, and 3 years later you're the 5th, it means that what we are doing here makes sense. So providing certainty to businesses, whether it's Obamacare, whether it's taxes, whether it's deficits, or any of those things, really matter to the job creators, not just in Ohio, but around the country.
But you have helped or had their back, certainly in the government in Ohio, by not completely repudiating things like Medicaid and all that. In fact, a lot of your critics say on the right, you've been almost over-pushing that, and it has hurt your image with them. What do you make of that?
Well, Neil, look, I had a chance to bring $14 billion of Ohioans' money back to treat people who have mental illness, to make sure that they don't end up in our jails and prisons, and also the ability to rehab people, because our addiction problems in this country are extremely severe. Now, I could leave the $14 billion in Washington, Neil, and I'm sure they do a good job with it. My sense is that we get that money back here to Ohio and deal with some of our significant problems. That's the right thing to do. So the Ohio.
So what do you think about your colleagues who don't take it? They just say that, shove it, keep it where it is.
Well, that's their choice, right?
Yeah.
And I have other colleagues that have said that they would take it. And
Absolutely.
What I look at, Neil, is two things. Look, here's the way I look at things. Number one, strengthen your economy, which we are clearly doing here in Ohio. But at the same time you do that, you've got to take care of people who live in the shadows to get them out of the ditch so they can experience the same kind of opportunities people have who are out there working. So all these numbers mean one thing. Give people a chance to realize their God-given destiny and their God-given potential. And whether they have mental illness or whether they have drug addiction, if we can do some things to help them to be productive, and we can do more of that now because we have some of our money home, and the other side of it is we've strengthened Ohio's economy, which gives us the chance to be able to help people. Neil, it's no different than if a mom and dad are stronger financially, they can help their children, and when they're weak, same is true with government. When the economy is strong out here, we can do more to help people who need to be helped.
I know you have poo-pooed this talk that you're setting up a run for president. I think you've absolutely said that's not the case. But when I hear reports that George Soros fears you the most of any prospective candidate, maybe owing back to the success you've had with the private sector job growth, maybe owing to the fact that income increases are running double the national average in your state. You know, maybe what's been happening on this rainy day fund, which I understand when you came in, was at around 89 cents, and now, to your point, it's at 1.4 billion.
We have a,
so I'm just saying that
that's right.
He obviously must be looking at that and has reason to fear you. What do you think of that?
Well, there's no reason to fear me, Neil. Look, the only thing I'm in this job to do is try to lift Ohioans. And the thing that makes me feel good about what's happening out here is we have almost 250,000 Ohioans who did not have work who now have work. And we know when people work, they have more dignity, self-confidence, they're better members, more powerful members of the community, they're stronger within their family. All good things come from work.
But is it a different,
work, you know,
and I know I'm getting back to the presidential thing, but the argument, some think you could make a credible run, is because you've done this with with none of the sort of bravado that's associated, fairly or not, with the Chris Christie. You've agitated people on the left and right, kind of like Chris Christie, but that temperament, that tone, and probably from a governor, is the Republican Party's best chance. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, Neil, in terms of how somebody wants to characterize what a presidential candidate should look like, I mean, I think that's interesting, but I'm not a presidential candidate. I'm running for re-election, and I don't have any interest in the presidency, but I'm flattered that people would think about me.
But your opponent who's running against you, he wants you to sign a pledge that you'll serve out your term.
I don't pay any attention to that kind of stuff. Here's the thing I want to tell you, Neil. You're on the air and you always say, if we cut taxes, if we bring about common sense regulation, if we are fiscally responsible, it will yield economic growth, which means good things for people. Okay? So in Ohio, we had a big deficit. We had too much regulation. Our taxes are too high. And we come in and in a simple way change that. And what do we get? We have a formula of success. We're number 5 in the country in job growth over the last 3 years. What this tells you is that there are solutions in Washington and there are solutions in other states to provide for economic growth and opportunity for people. That's what gets me excited. And, Neil, let me tell you what else. You cannot ignore people who live in the shadows if you're going to be a responsible leader. You've got to help those folks that can't help themselves to get them to a point where they can be productive and realize their God-given potential. That's our formula in Ohio. Forget all the politics. Forget about all the stuff that people worry about and do your job.
Governor, very good seeing you again.
Always good, Neil. You're the best.
I keep telling myself that. Governor Kasich, thank you very much.